Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CBL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe and
I'm Mike Rice.
And today we are talking about week 3 of the Canadian Premier League. We had a lot of great matches in this weekend as well. A lot of late goals, late chances, a couple feisty moments, saved penalties, a lot of action in week 3 of the CPL. A lot to dive into. But before we do, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name to see the visual side of the podcast. Now let's start with the Friday night game, which was Cavalry against Vancouver. The only game on Friday, made it nice and easy for people to watch. That one ended 1-1 for both sides, splitting the honors. And I think Vancouver will be, aggrieved for not getting all 3 points, because I can't believe it. For the first time this season, they actually look like a competitive side, Mike.
Yeah, really weird. After how it started these first 2 weeks. But yeah, they looked like they were organised. Looked like they had a plan to be that sort of, we know we're the underdog. We're going to make it tough. We're gonna push you hard. We're gonna press. We're gonna sit back when we need to and do what we can when we get the ball. But just were pretty prepared not to have it very much. And yeah, just caught Cavalry out, didn't they? I mean, Wera Diaz and Terran Campbell sorting their partnership out, robbing Montgomery of the ball to get Mesquita his first for the club. It's quite a nice way for the fans to enjoy that goal with the three of them combining.
Yeah, and it kind of showed how Vancouver have been able to evolve rather quickly in just a week. Because, let's be honest, the first 2 weeks, they were kind of listless in their play, not only on the ball, but off the ball, especially. It felt like there was no organization in the pressing at all, and it was just completely just done on a whim, it felt like. Now, in this game, it turned it on its head completely. And afterwards, Afshin did mention that they had worked heavily on their pressing structure in the training before this match, and it seems to have paid off, because there was always 2 or 3 Vancouver players on whichever ball carrier was Cavalry was currently holding, and it just felt like they were everywhere. Like it was surprising to see Vancouver be so hardworking in their pressing off the ball and just in their structure off the ball, and led to that chance and really, really well worked finish from Mesquita. Great work from Wera Diaz to tackle and win the ball. Great work from Campbell to find Mesquita instead of taking that shot on. You would think leading top goal scorer in the league, he's going to take that shot on, but is unselfish and sees the pass to Mesquita. Mesquita first time just side foots, passes it into the net, giving Carducci no chance. Yeah, it was surprising, but a welcome surprise, I think, for most people, especially Vancouver fans, to be able to see them play so well away from home. Now, that being said, that was kind of the theme of Vancouver last season is, whenever they did play well, it seemed to be more away from home than at home, even though that was still kind of few and far between. The real question will be if they can continue that into the next home match, which I think is against Pacific. So another Ferryside derby, Salish Cheese derby. There's a bunch of names for it now. But take your pick. But I was quite impressed with Vancouver overall. I mean, they only had 33% possession by the end of the match, but they still had 2 more shots than Cavalry. That just showed how well they played as a kind of counter-attacking side, and how their pressing allowed them to create opportunities, because they had multiple opportunities. It wasn't like that was their only chance. They had multiple opportunities. We'll talk about the ones at the end later, but overall, just especially for like the first 60 or 70 minutes of the game, pretty much the whole, essentially like 80% of the game, Vancouver were the better side and were outworking Cavalry. And I don't know if Cavalry thought it was going to be an easy match, but it just felt like they were off, beat for majority of the game.
Yeah, I mean, on the Cavalry side, like, yeah, they appeared like they kind of expected Vancouver to just sort of not turn up. They were just really seemed to be a bit put off that they had to get set up and they had to go out for 90 minutes because they just didn't look great at all. Players were the players who were big parts of that front four. They were fantastic at the end of last season. They've shown that they can be really, really dangerous. They've got the last year's Golden Boot winner up front who just get his goal right at the end, but it just doesn't seem like they were ready for it at all, and they weren't. They were just waiting for that time, and all of a sudden it gets late into the second half, and it's like, actually, yeah, no, we are still losing. Like, they just seem to forget to play, and Montgomery, for one, he seemed to forget how to play. It's an awful performance from him. He got bullied by the Cavalry, by the Vancouver players, both Werediers and Campbell, and anytime he was trying to catch up on, like, when he's making his recovery runs after when Vancouver were counter-attacking, he just didn't have the strength to keep up with them. Even these young players that are coming through were pushing him off the ball, and there's no surprise to see him come out quite early on the second half, like to get replaced in the second half. It's going to be really interesting to see how the new centre-back gets settled. When Levi Lang might get that opportunity to get on there and see how that fits in, because it did look like we know they're going to miss Dan Klomp, but I think the leadership on the pitch as well to get them going was probably missing there today as well. I think some of the players who should maybe have done it, you've got obviously Carducci's there and Camargo, Ed, but they just didn't seem to have anyone pushing them on and organising them and saying, like, come on, sort this out. Wake up.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. It kind of felt like they were waiting for that spark to happen, and it almost didn't at all.
Yeah.
They had to wait until added time for it to happen and that little bit of magic. But yeah, the entire performance from Cavalry was very un-Cavalry like, especially given the form that they were in at the start of the season, and obviously the way that they ended last season. It kind of felt like it was just, a blip, but one that was almost very costly because they had never lost to Vancouver in Calgary. Not in the league, not even in the Canadian Championship. And for 95 minutes, it looked like that streak was finally going to end. But, when you have the Golden Boot winner, it doesn't matter what minute it's in. If it's in the first minute or the 95th minute, he gets that chance, he'll be capable of putting it away. And that's exactly what he did. But, it doesn't take anything away from Vancouver's performance, especially, a few select players. We talked about the attack and the way that they work together for the goal, but even just throughout the match, you look at the midfield. Mosqueda as well, like, aside from his goal, was a really, really welcome addition to the midfield in that holding position alongside Emerick Fotzing. And Emerick Fotzing looked fantastic. He dominated that midfield, and I think he benefited from having someone in front of them that might have not had that same confidence in Mironjuk for Cavalry. I think Cavalry were really missing that kind of Charlie Trafford, Diego Gutierrez-esque presence there. And then once, Shemi Chom came on, it kind of changed a bit, but especially in that first half, Vancouver were really, really strong in that midfield and their pressing, and then in the way that they were organized to be able to get that ball forward once they did get the ball. I found that, Fotzing and Mosqueda were really, really strong together as a pairing. And I was surprised by Fotzing, because I'll be honest, I didn't know much about him. I just saw him as a 17-year-old player, and I thought they're going to throw a youngster, again, just straight into the fire, and he's either going to, flare up or burn. And luckily for him, he's shining right now because he's had some really good performances. When he came on against York, he looked good, and then in this match, he's looked really strong as well. And I'm expecting to see him continue that with the confidence because even though he still is 17, he does have some room to grow. He had that opportunity right at the very end for Jose Navarro to just put it on through for him so he can go clean through on goal right at the death, literally the last action before the referee blew his whistle, which I'm
Yeah.
sure he'll kick himself for. But overall, really impressive performance from, again, a 17-year-old midfielder.
Yeah, great to see when he gets those opportunities. And yeah, like you say, the only thing you can say is that he didn't get his head up for that. But 17, you're in the 98th minute, you can forgive it to a degree as much as Navarro might not.
Exactly. And, Vancouver could have been 2 or 3-0 ahead had it not been for some really good saves from Marco Carducci. It's the first time, I think, in a while that we see a Vancouver FC game and Callum Irving isn't the best goalkeeper performing
Yeah.
on the pitch, making big saves. I'm
Mm.
sure that's a welcome
Yeah, definitely.
surprise for him, seeing somebody else having to sweat between the sticks. But yeah, I just really was impressed in all three facets of play from Vancouver, even in their defense too, because Cavalry had 2/3 of possession and were pushing, but they were doing really well dispelling anything they were throwing. Cavalry loves the cross, and Vancouver were actually really good at being able to clear those crosses. I was actually looking at the stats because while I was watching the game, I thought they're clearing this ball a lot, and they are, and they were, because Cavalry cleared the ball 19 times, while Vancouver FC cleared the ball 45 times. That's once every 2 minutes
Yeah.
in that match. On average, that's how much they cleared the ball. But yeah, just overall, I think as a whole team performance, so many positives. Even if they didn't get the result, even if Cavalry got that goal at the end and they had to come away with a point and
Yeah.
having to still continue to be winless at Atco Field, I still think there's a lot of positives that Afshan Gapi and his team can take away from, especially with that big match against Pacific, coming up for next week.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. It's going to be how can they continue, and maybe not expecting them to go on and just go on a big run and win a run of games, but if they can just put in a similar type of performance next week, you could get something more out of a game. Pacific aren't as strong as Cavalry, so yeah, be interesting to see if they can keep it going if it's can do a little bit of a run of consistency rather than great game, terrible game, great game, terrible game.
That would be nice. That would be nice. And to have that consistency, they have to stay focused for all of the match. 95th minute, it hurts, but you have to be switched on until the 100th minute. You need to. I mean, there was that also penalty call, I guess, in the 98th minute where Cavalry were attacking right before Fotzing had that chance. I don't really think it was a penalty. A lot of Cavalry players were angry about it, but had it been a little bit more contact, it could have been a penalty, and then all of that work would have been for nothing because Cavalry might have won it with 2 extra time goals. So I think Vancouver FC, besides the really good effort that they did, they just need to be, and I think this comes with experience, and hopefully Mosquita and Campbell and Diaz can help out with this, that they just need to be able to hold out games, that game management, for that to really come through to help them out to see out games, because you can have great performances, and this is a great performance to be very proud of, but in the end, you need results, and for that, you need to be smart about it, and hopefully that's something that they can learn as the weeks go by. But now let's move on to the second game of the match day, and that was arguably the most exciting game, I'd say, of the entire weekend, and that was Atletico Ottawa 3, York United 2. 5-goal thriller, and thriller it was.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't stay for the whole match, if you didn't stay until the end, you missed a lot of nail-biting action. But let's start from the beginning, because even though Ottawa were the home side, York United were the one that started strong and struck first. in this match, and it was again through Altobelli, the player that scored twice for York United in the opening day match against Vancouver FC, does it again against
Mm.
Atletico, making it 3 in 3 games already. Once again, great story for him, coming to York United young, not being able to make it, having to go back, take some time to grow and learn. Now returns to York United and is off to a flying start with 3 goals and 3 really well taking goals as well. And this is something that you wrote down here in our notes, but you're right in that Altobelli kind of gives something different to the
Yeah.
forward line of York United because he's just a pure, just out and out finisher. He's a poacher in the box. Doesn't need many touches, but he will place them perfectly, and that's how he's getting those goals.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he's ever going to take more than one touch. When he just wants the ball in the box, and he just goes straight for goal, very direct, very quick, and he's catching defenders out. And this one was good movement. He throws his head at it. Like, they've got some fun players that we're all excited to see. Big fans of Massimo Ferrin, obviously, and seeing how him, Batar, and Adonai Sharid are all going to fit together. But they're much more creative, trying to move around the box and picking up, floating out into different areas and finding zones. Whereas Altobelli just like, well, there's the goal. That's where I'm going there. So it gives him a bit of a mix of like the types of players there, which we weren't sure about at the beginning of the season. Like, we weren't sure about York at all because it's the whole new thing with Eustachio in charge. But now it seems like, well, there's someone who can be a little bit more of a focal point as well to mix in around these players that are going to try and move defenders around, and they're doing it really well. And that's why he's getting these opportunities, because he's going to find those spots and it's just going to take a shot. He's just going to go for goal, and it looks like very promising for York United going forward.
Yeah, and I like that point they made of the focal point, because we're going to talk later in this episode of not having a focal point and a proper number 9 costing a couple of teams. But for York United, it seems like they do have somebody like that, and someone that can just finish their dinner, which is harder than you might believe in this league.
Yeah.
But I also want to commend Max Ferrari on the delivery, because if you see the replay on it, it skims the head of 2 defenders before falling to Altobelli. Like, it was just pinpoint perfection from Max Ferrari in that delivery. So I just wanted to give him a shout out, because that was such a lovely cross in. And York seemed to be ready to, play the villains and spoil the party. Going into halftime with that 1-0 advantage. But it's a game of 2 halves with this one. And I know, I know that's the old cliche, but it really was. I don't know what, Mejia said to his team at halftime, but it seemed to have worked, because right away, Ottawa were off to the races. And just 3 minutes in the second half, had a glorious opportunity to equalize, and I'm not quite sure how Cloutier missed that chance.
No, it's just as it goes across. I think everyone's looking at it. Like, it feels like the stadium goes silent for a minute in confusion as well. Just like, how has that gone all the way across the line?
Yeah, I was kind of incredulous myself in that one, but luckily for the Ottawa fans, they didn't have to wait much longer for the goal to actually be scored, because Sam Salter gets a little bit of fortune with his goal. Kind of falls awkwardly. It's between him and a couple other players. Manages to dig the ball from underneath him and kind of chip the keeper as it kind of lofts into the side netting. Not exactly sure the physics of how that one worked, but
weird chip scoop deflected. I'm not sure what we call that. A choop.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a correct terminology for what that effort was, but it went in, and that was the important part for
that's all that
Atletico
matters.
Ottawa. And literally just 5 minutes later, Manny Aparicio, against one of his old clubs, shows why he's one of the best players in the league and why he's so important to Atletico Ottawa, because he just gets the ball, I'd say like 30-something yards away from that, turns, sees space in front of him and says, yeah, I'm just going to take this, and absolutely thumps an effort into the top corner. I mean, it's one of those ones. I love those kinds of goals where it goes up and down. It kind of curls like vertically into the top net. It's like, that's like thump is the only way that I can properly describe that kind of goal. Just whacked it into the top left corner, and it was a stunning goal, a screamer from the former York United man. And yeah, the celebrations, I think, were apt, because if you're gonna, score a goal like that, you're gonna want to make sure that everybody in the stadium is as excited as you are for that one. And yeah, just fantastic. And for them, jubilation. For York, within 10 minutes of starting the second half, they go from being 1-0 up to 2-1 down. And
completely overrun.
Yeah, it just felt like York took a nap at halftime while Ottawa took some energy drinks, because it just flipped on its head. York were working harder than Ottawa in the first half. They got that goal. They looked, to be on at least level terms, if not better, in pretty much all categories against Ottawa. And then the second half, they just completely switch off. And Ottawa just take complete advantage of that. And when you're at home and you have the crowd rallying behind you, giving you that energy, allowing you to get that kind of momentum, if you're York United, you got to stop that. You got to stop that any which way you can. And to be fair, they did. They did try to stop that. They did try to break down the game, but it wasn't enough, because he managed to get that space and take that shot and take that fantastic goal for his team. And then for a nice stretch of like 20-25 minutes, kind of felt a little bit like a bloodbath, a little bit, with the fouls and the aggressiveness and everything between them. You could see that York were trying to get back into the game. You could see that Ottawa are trying to create more chances, but you put the stat here: in the entire 90 minutes, there was 47 fouls, the most ever in a CPL game, and 10 yellow cards split between the two sides. 7 of them going to York United. I mean, if that isn't a feisty game, classic CPL game, I don't know what else could count.
It was mad, absolutely mad, and we got that from the True North Foot Instagram page. I saw that come out, and I remember watching the game and texting you saying like, "This is feisty." They just like during the game, it just York aren't gonna back down. Like the week before against Halifax, feisty, and then it goes to Ottawa, and even more so. They're going to be a team that's going to frustrate a lot of others. They're not going to back down. They're just going to keep going at them, and we'll see. We'll see how that works and how they keep their cool going forward. It's at least it's only yellow so far.
Luckily no red cards for either team in these matches, and I think actually the whole weekend we didn't see a single red card. No. So it was a nice clean weekend for everybody in all of the games.
Despite the most fouls in the game ever.
Despite the most fouls in the game. Yeah, exactly. But it was a bit of a bloodbath for the next 20-25 minutes after Aparisio's goal. And then the last 15 minutes was a movie. It was a blockbuster, because York did manage to find a way back into the game. And to say this was lucky might be understating it, unless, maybe Riley Ferrazzo is like Ronan Kratt and says that he absolutely meant to do it. But similar fashion, I don't think so either, but you never know. Riley Ferrazzo on the left side tries to cross it in and puts in such a good cross that hits off the back post and goes inside, giving Nathan Ingham, absolutely no chance on that one. And, when you're pushing and pushing and pushing, you'll take what you can. And when you get luck like that, when you get some nice fortune like that, I mean, you're not going to complain. And with 7 minutes to go, York were level, and then it became Ottawa that became the team that was really pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And if there's ever a man that you want to put your money on to score a one-on-one goal in the 92nd minute from Ottawa, given the performances early in the season, I think everyone and their mother would choose David Rodriguez to be that player for Ottawa. And he had that chance. He had that chance one-on-one, just a complete mix-up at the back or with a long ball. And he managed to get the ball away from Ingham. And only is him and the net, but given the momentum, I think he got a little push. I forget which defender it was, but I think that defender was the difference. Got a little push as he pushed it past Ingham. And when he tried to, pass it into the back of the net, he had too much momentum. He fell over himself and put it wide of the mark. And I'll be honest, when I saw that, I thought that was it.
Yeah.
That was the chance.
This is in the 92nd minute as well. And this is just the first of a few chances. It was a chaotic end. And LAC gets played through. And we can see that he's definitely a left-footed player who, because he cuts it across and goes round Thiago to go around him and plays that right foot shot and just can't get enough cut back on it at all. And slices wide, and you can just see the look on his face where he's lying on the floor, just like, what have I done? How have I not won us the game?
Like I said, anyone else, you would have bet on him to score that 100%, especially with how he started the season off. But, the game didn't finish there because immediately afterwards, you had York having a chance, literally 30 or 45 seconds after that chance happened, where Sholojimo got a chance to go in behind and tried himself to absolutely belt an effort that cannoned off the frame of the goal. Had nearly that gone in, nearly broke the frame of the goal. I don't know how what is he, 17 now? I don't know how a 17-year-old can have so much power in his left boot, but he did. He managed to conjure it up, and unfortunately for him, it struck against the near post and went out. But nearly York United stole all 3 points at the end. But that wasn't it either, because then in the 96th minute, off a free kick, I think it was Ferrazzo who fouled.
Yeah, he was chasing back and just started. He seemed like he was panicked. And just throw. There was no need to foul. That was the most frustrating thing. Like, just slow them down. The whistle's going to go any second.
Yeah, but like you mentioned, panicked a bit, brought him down. Then came the cross in, and the cross itself didn't look all that dangerous because it went behind seemingly everyone. So at first glance, I thought it was bad delivery, but then sneaking around, between the back post and the center of the box, Noah Badnet peels away from his defender and side foots an effort into the corner of the goal. And it was just really good, like, precision from a center back, because it wasn't like, it had venom in it. It bounced a few times before going in, but had enough pace and enough placement to beat Orteaga and just get that winner. And then the celebrations afterwards too, you could sense that this was a feisty game because of the celebrations. I think Mejia, I saw on the replay, went up and started yelling and celebrating in front of the York bench. And I was like, okay, this is where we're at right now. This is where this kind of rivalry maybe is going between these two sides, because everyone in that stadium felt that goal. And obviously it was poetry. And Noah Batna was the one to get the winner against his old team, where he broke out. And
I love it though that you get so many players around the world and they score against their old team that do the muted celebration or the apology for scoring, which means nothing. But Aparicio and the back, they just loved it.
I can't even blame them. I'll be
I know.
honest. I don't
Loved
think
it.
even York fans can blame them. When you score a screamer, you score a 96th minute winner. What are you gonna do? Apologize? No, you're gonna run into your teammates and scream and yell and celebrate.
Scored a goal, enjoy it, love it.
Yeah, genuinely. But that is how the game ended for Ottawa, coming away 3-2 winners right at the death. I think all in all, if you look at the stats and if you look at the way that both teams played, I think Ottawa created more, and I think they justified them being the winners with as many chances they created. They created 4 big chances, according to the stats, and they missed all 4 of them. So definitely room for improvement for them in that regard. But they came away as 3-2 winners, and York United will feel heartbroken, I think, given that they led early on, and then they managed to come back after that 10 minutes where they went 2-1 down to make it 2-2, have that chance with Sholajimo. They'll feel, quite disappointed with the way that they lost that one. But again, for them, it's a lot of lessons learned, especially in the second half. They have to be switched on from the first minute because Ottawa aren't like Vancouver FC from 2 weeks ago. Well, they're just kind of sink their heads and have to improvise when they don't have many ideas. Ottawa just need a 15-minute break to regroup, chat, get back on the pitch with new ideas, renewed energy, and then got the 2 goals.
Yeah, and when you've got Aparicio just sort of carrying the team, moving them forward, everyone just ends up going at his pace. And I think York will feel unfortunate not to get anything out of the game. I thought they were good. I'm excited by the team, like where they're going. They've still got a little bit. It's still new, so we'll see where it's going. I didn't think Thiago had a great game. He didn't fill me with a lot of confidence, but again, his debut, wasn't it? I think. So, we'll see how he gets on. But the rest of the team, I really like the way they're playing. So I'm really interested to see where it's going. We'll see how they cope with the different challenges now going forward against other teams. I'm still finding Ottawa really bizarre. So you got Aparicio, who did. I was really impressed with Antonoro before he had to go off injured. Really concerned about Sam Salter and Blue Tabla finding any kind of consistency. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on Aparicio and Rodriguez to get the goals going forward, and then set plays are going to be massive for them. And it's going to have to see if and when Monty Patterson gets a little bit extra time and find out a bit more about him, whether he could be a bit more of a clinical forward, or if Salter can actually use this goal to get a bit of momentum himself. But yeah, 2 interesting teams that I think will be quite fun to watch in different ways.
Especially when you consider that Ottawa are averaging 3 goals a game so far. They've scored 9 goals in 3 games, and they have 8 different goal scorers. So it's very much scoring by committee for Ottawa rather than having an out-and-out striker, which, I mean, if that continues, then it's the team that matters, not the individuals. So if it gets them to the end, to the playoffs, and to lifting silverware, I'm sure they won't mind if they're not in the top goal scoring.
True. I guess it's just for Salter. He's now the main striker. Del Campo's gone, who scored a lot of goals last year in a short period, and then nothing for a while. But they've said, right, well, we're keeping you and you're starting, and I guess there's an expectation that he's going to get more goals than he did last year. So I'm not sure how that's going at the moment. He seems to be lacking a little bit of confidence in front of goal for me.
Yeah, no, I agree, and especially Blue Tabla, because Blue Tabla had a golden opportunity to score in this match and just completely fumbled it. And even the one against Vancouver, that it was the 1 goal he scored this season, was gifted to him. I still feel like he's one player that needs to put in the hours in front of goal and have a little bit more composure about him, because he's got all the talent in the world. but he really struggles to score those kind of easy chances. He'll score a banger every now and then, just kind of like Aparicio, but he needs to be more consistent, especially because he's becoming more of that kind of dangerous final third player for Ottawa. And when you have that kind of player, you need them to put their chances away. So hopefully for him and for Ottawa continues. But as long as somebody's scoring for Ottawa,
they're not going to be bothered.
that's all that Mejia I think will really care about at the end of the day. As long as they're scoring a bunch of goals and winning a bunch of games, that's what it's all about. But yeah, we'll see how Ottawa develop as the weeks go on. But now let's talk about the third match of match day 3, and that was Halifax against Pacific. Another high-scoring game. 4 goals scored, 3 for Halifax, 1 for Pacific, and Halifax continue their winning ways at the start of the season. They are one of only 3 teams in the league that are undefeated so far, 2 wins and a draw. And I think you look at the way that they played in this game, it really only felt like it was going one way for Halifax, and that was for a win. They did have a rough start, a scary start, courtesy of Ryan Yesley. I thought that it was going to be much worse than it ended up being. Yesley essentially passing it right to, was it Hurd that got
the Cavalry?
Oh, right. And
who just looked like, I'm sorry, why have you given me the
He looked a little bit shell-shocked and didn't know how to put it away. Credit to Yesley for reacting quickly and being able to smother the ball, but almost a calamitous start for Halifax in that one. But afterwards, Pacific had that early chance and had a little bit of that momentum at the start. But then soon Halifax got into their shape and really began to play a different kind of style than we're used to under Patrice Geyser. Because before, they loved to have the ball, they loved to have possession, they loved to pass it around. But I think they recognized that Pacific were going to play the same way. Because we talked about how Pacific were a team that now looks to want to hold on to the ball more and play more with the ball. And I think the guys are recognized that and decide, okay, you guys can have the ball, but we're going to now be a really organized, high pressing intensity team. And that's what it was. And, Patrice Geyser talked about how in preseason, that was something that they really worked on, which was their pressing, how to press as a team. I guess he got inspired from his time working under Jesse Marsh for the Canadian national team. And now he's brought that to his team. He's clearly a coach that likes to be inspired by coaches around him. We saw that with Vanni Sartini and the Whitecaps season prior. I guess this season it was Jesse Marsh in the national team. But so far, so good for him because the pressing really allowed them to not give Pacific any kind of real weight with the ball. They had a lot of the possession, but they didn't really do much with it because Halifax were constantly pressing them, forcing them to have to go backwards, to have to go horizontal instead of forwards and into mistakes. And it really was a kind of new dimension for Halifax that I enjoyed because it showed that when they were on the ball, they could play quickly and they could still use the talents of like Caligari and Sean Rea and Probo to play well. But as soon as they won back the ball, they just went and attacked and created opportunities. And when they didn't have the ball, they were just waiting for those moments. And I thought it was really, really clever from Patrice Geyser and really, really well done for Halifax because when they did get the ball, they started to just move the Pacific's defense apart and it started to really put the pressure on Pacific, not just off the ball, but when they did have the ball as well. And that's why I felt like even though maybe the stats don't reflect such a one-sided game, honestly, between like the 10th and the like 80th minute beyond your 10th to like the end, it just felt like one-way traffic with Halifax because they just felt in control of the match even if they didn't have the ball.
Yeah, they're less hectic than they've been at times. So they're not just constantly rushing and pressing from the instance. They're setting their traps now, and just so Pacific could have the ball for a bit, and they were guiding them into the areas they wanted to more often than not, and then they press. Pacific had a couple of chances from range. Bustos blasted high and wide a couple of times, and yeah, they just, like you say, Wanderers just were faster than them. They were thinking quicker, they were acting quicker, and then they were moving too fast for them. You could see that Pacific's defense was so slow at reacting to things, and it was none more than when the second goal went in. As they're passing the ball through, you can watch the Pacific defense just taking a step and looking around and realizing as the ball's going around them that they're completely out of position for Telfer to end up. I mean, he's on the penalty spot on his own, just ready to pass it past Max Anker. Is rushing out to him because the centre backs are all in different positions and they've been completely cut open. And they were just so much faster than them. When they were ready to go, they went, and Pacific just couldn't keep up at all.
Yeah. And I think it's the way that sort of Pacific, we're just a second behind. Like you said, like you mentioned, they're just a step behind. Even on the first goal, fantastic goal from Wesley Mateo.
Really well taken, yeah.
His first effort was going so wide. It was skewing so wide. Got a little bit of fortune that it bounced off, who was it? The Pauli, I think it was. It bounced off the Pauli and then fell back to him. I have some serious questions about Ronan Krat, because instead, I don't know if he thought that the Pauli was going to have control of the ball, so Krat started running away.
It seemed so, yeah.
But it just looks so bad that the Pauli gets on the end of the shot, falls over, the ball is going literally towards where Timoteo and Krat are, and Krat says, "See ya," and runs the opposite way, and looks back and realizes the ball isn't following him.
Yeah.
It just looks so bad on him, but credit to Timoteo, because the way that he hit that, it looked like he barely had any power that he generated himself. It really felt like he just kind of used his boot to reflect the ball.
Yeah.
Barely any follow through. He just kind of used his side foot and curled it. It's one of the most like aesthetically pleasing goals when you just curl it, hits the bottom of the crossbar and just dings down and bounces in. I love those kinds of goal, and he just does really well to be able to execute that. And then you get that lead, and it really felt like Halifax, as soon as they got that lead, they were not going to let it go. And then the second goal, like you mentioned, Pacific 6s and 7s in their defensive structure. But I think that really is exacerbated by the way that Halifax played so quickly, because Sean Rea burst forward, passed it to Georgia Probo, who's been incredibly impressive at the start of the season. And Probo does something that I think is so underappreciated in the game, especially when it's not at the highest level, and it's to anticipate and play quickly. He sees that Ryan Telfer is making that run in, and instead of taking a touch, looking up to see where Telfer is and passing it through, he instead already knows he's going there and hits it first time right to his feet, giving Telfer that extra second to set himself up and then shoot and score. Had Probo taken that extra touch, looked up, taken that half second to see where it is, and then placed that pass, maybe Telfer wouldn't have the space. Maybe Pacific would have managed to get one body back to at least put pressure on Telfer, and maybe Telfer would have missed a chance. But because Probo hit that pass first time like that, he allowed Telfer to have that extra second to compose himself, and that makes all the difference. And that's what I really like about Halifax, is they're capable of playing quickly up the pitch because they're anticipating the passes and the movement. They are being proactive in the way that they play, and you get goals like that look fantastic on the highlight reel. But for me, especially as someone that, you know, I as a coach, I really enjoy those kinds of games where players are clever in the way they play, and they play quickly like that. So I really enjoyed that goal. And at 2-0, it didn't really look like Pacific had much in it.
No, that's the difficulty. They're really struggling. And So like Telfer gets the goal. I mean, he's not an out and out striker, but he's putting in a decent impression of one. He does work hard, but on the other side, he's putting in the effort, but it's just not working at all for him. He wasn't getting any opportunities. I think once Danata came on and he went more central and Hurd went wide, I think, if I'm remembering rightly, he got a bit of more joy because he's coming deeper and then he's going forward with the ball and he's got a chance to run. But with his back to goal, he just wasn't in the game at all. Like TMG was comfortable and Sal was comfortable in dealing with him. And because Halifax was so much quicker, it was just a long ball forward more often than not for Hurd. So you just felt really sorry for him because you see him running and running and running, and it's all just in vain. And then you put in all that work, and then Zanata comes on and scores in 10 seconds. You almost feel like, I mean, this is great, but why don't I get this chance?
Yeah, it'll be kind of a kick in the teeth for Josh Hurd because he does work really hard. He's one of the hardest working players in that team, and you see that every game. Even seasons prior, you see that. And he's really good at what he does, which is running, collecting the ball, going at defenders. He's really good at winning fouls. He was the most fouled player in this game. But when you're looking for a target, man, when you're looking for that focal point, like we were talking Altobelli with York, he's not that player usually.
No,
he had that
Pacific
good.
need to go quicker, don't they? Though that's the thing. Like Telford's not an out and out striker, but Halifax move and they get the ball forward and they're doing things quickly. Whereas Halifax, Pacific are doing it too slow, and teams get back, and there's no way of because I mean Adonijah Reid has been doing quite well with even like the games when Altobelli was on the bench for the first half in the last game. Reed and Ferrin and Bitar were finding spaces because they were doing things quickly. Halifax is exactly the same, doing things quickly, moving the ball, getting the ball forward quick. But when it's too slow, then they end up getting pressed and it's just a long ball and it's hopeful and it's not going to work.
No. And I think you can see that in the way that Hurd played, where I think he wanted the ball to him faster, but they couldn't. And that's why I think he had the least touches out of any outfield player in the game. I think he only had something like 25 touches in 90 minutes. And it's because Pacific just couldn't get it there quick enough. And when you have players like Marco Bustos, when you have players like Ronan Krat, when you have somebody like Aiden Daniels, these are clever players. These are players that you would think would be good at being able to get the ball up quickly and be able to attack with a bit of pace. But it just fell flat altogether for Pacific. And a lot of credit goes to Halifax's pressing structure again, because they were able to stop them in the tracks and force them to go backwards and to slow them down in their attack. But when you're a team that's under that kind of pressure, you need to be able to find a way to bypass it. And I think there's the next step for James Merriman. But they did get that goal right away. Like Dario Zanata, I think the ball went out for a throw. He came on, the throw went in, a cross went into the box, and then he immediately got into the end of it. First touch, 10 seconds in, just sweeps it into the back of the net, giving Pacific a lifeline. But even still, even with that lifeline, you think, okay, now Pacific are going to kick on. Now, it might be squeaky bum time for Halifax. Didn't really feel that way for the rest of the game. It kind of felt like Halifax were like, okay, that's a bit of a setback, but we're going to keep doing what we're doing, and we're going to be, we're going to bring some fresh legs in. We're going to kind of make sure that we're a little more cautious at the back, but they didn't change the game plan too much. They were still pressing really well.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't need to change really. It's just freshening up.
Yeah. And then Pacific were unable to recreate that kind of, momentary genius that they got for Zanata's goal. And then we saw the introduction of Johan Bai for Halifax at right wing. And we got to talk about the right wing because they have two dangerous looking players there. Bahambula and Johan Bai look like two peas in a pod in the kind of profile player they are. They are exciting, tricky, dynamic, pacey wingers that always look dangerous when they have the ball. and Bahambula should have had more goals so far this season. Should have had more opportunities
he
to.
nearly had a great ball in for Telfer, but Telfer just couldn't convert. He smashed across after getting down as well. Like,
Yeah, should have had more opportunities to assist as well. But the brilliant part, I think, about them is that, and especially the luxury that Patrice Geyser has, is that you can play somebody like Bahambula for 70, 75 odd minutes and say, okay, you're getting a little tired. Let's put on Johan Bay now and just put him against defenders that have been defending Bahambula for 75 minutes and now have to do it against somebody of similar quality but with fresher legs. And that's exactly what happened at the end when they scored that final goal. Is that it looked all too easy for Johan Bay. Said, "Oh, you're coming across. Let me just put it right past you. Oh, you're coming across. Let me put it right past you." And then the quality too, because I don't really see that all that often, where a right-footed player opens his body up, coming in from the right, and tries to curl it away from himself to the keeper's left into the near post. Usually, you see a player try to sweep it towards the far post because it's easier for him. But no, he chose to do it the hard way, but still managed to score it, showing the quality that he has. I mean, we've talked about, in our preview for Halifax, that he scored some big goals, in Coupe de France and stuff like that to eliminate some major European teams. So we know that he can be a big game player, but just it looked all too easy for him. And it's because Pacific were so tired at that point and were unable to stop him. So for Patrice Geyser, he must have looked at that and be like, okay, we have something here. We have danger here off the bench, because if we can't fit them both into the team, then they're just going to have to fight each other for that starting berth. And whoever doesn't start, well, you're going to get an opportunity in the last 15, 20 to be the game changer, the difference maker. And I think that's going to be really, really, really useful for them. And I mean, Johan Bay almost got a penalty for them before his goal. I don't know if it was just in the box. It looked like it might have been just before the line.
Outside,
yeah. Referee didn't call it a foul. I thought for sure it was a foul. I was just wondering if it was
I think if he hadn't already been booked, and the ref was probably knackered trying to keep up with Halifax's attacks as well. Because that was he was taken down.
I think it was Pedro Machado who already
he was already on booking. That's who he went past again for the goal, who just didn't really try. Like, he beats Cavalry. Was it Cavalry?
Cavalry?
He beats him to get to the ball first, then turns past Machado, which he just doesn't even put in an effort. He's just like, well, I'll get booked. I'm not gonna like, if I do make a challenge, I'll probably trip him. It'll be a red. I'll just let him score.
It really did feel that way. I just disappointing altogether from the Pacific, because it wasn't even like they played badly. It just felt like they played right into the hands of Halifax, and they had great opportunities. Like we mentioned right at the beginning, they had some really good opportunities.
Yeah,
they just couldn't put them away, and then afterwards they just struggled to attack with any pace at all. And once again, another week where we're talking about missing that number 9 presence for them. We talked about, is Josh Hurd the answer? So far, he had a great game against Valour, but since then has been struggling. And I feel like you need to have somebody like a Naltabelli or like a Terran Campbell or a Wedo Diaz that can be that kind of focal point to allow you to be like, all right, let's get the ball to him quickly, get it at his feet, then let's rush forward. He can hold on to the ball, wait for the runners, and then we can attack with pace. Doesn't really feel like Pacific are able to do that right now, because Hurd, as much as he's working hard, isn't getting into those positions, doesn't have the physicality to maybe hold off defenders as easily. It feels like every time that he is trying to hold off a defender, he's fighting with all of his might, so his passes and his play isn't going to be as clean because of his diminutive size relative to the center backs. So I feel like as much as Josh Hurd can be an option, if you want to be at the top with the likes of Cavalry and Forge and Ottawa and Halifax right now, you need to find someone that can have a little bit more presence about them at the center forward position, especially in the way that Pacific like to play.
Yeah, again, like it's because they're so slow. I just, like, part of me thinks you swap him with Wachewski, and it's going to be the same thing. Like, he's a big guy, he can move, but they're only playing these long balls when they're trying to build out and they get rushed and they can't make a pass, so they're hitting it long. Like, and then they're number 9 for the last year and a half, 2 years. Whoever's been up there has struggled for service, and the service they're getting is not brilliant, and that's something that they need to work on. Like, that's almost more important than who's starting in the 9. It's just like, how are we even getting it to them? Because like we could go break the bank and bring in a 9 and not give them the ball.
That's very true. Yeah. No, I think you're right there, in that it's the buildup. That's the biggest issue right now, is the attacking buildup, because you look at, you're right. You look at the strikers from the seasons past, your Easton Angaros, your Rian Moores. They had more than their fair share of graveyard shifts where they're just running back and forth at the top of the line and just struggle to have any impact in the game. Feel like that's probably one of the biggest issues that James Merriman has had to contend with in his career as a Pacific FC head coach, and it's something that he needs to find a way to fix if he wants to be up there with the big boys at the end of the season. But for now, let's finish off with the fourth and final game of the match day, and that was a 1-1 draw between Forge FC and Valour FC. This one was played at Hamilton Stadium, and another one similar to the first match day the first game of the match day between Cavalry and Vancouver surprised many people in the way that the away side played, because similar to Vancouver FC, Valour felt like they were the better team at the end of the match and will feel a bit hard done by not getting all 3 points in this match. The way that they began, Mike, it really felt like, maybe, again, similar to Cavalry, Forge were thinking this was going to be, an easy day out. They just had to pass the ball around, wait for Valour to make a few mistakes, and then they'd get the 3 points. But it wasn't like that. Valour came out and immediately outworked Forge.
Yeah.
For every duel, for every ball, every second ball, every bounce, Valour were there, and they were working hard, and they were fighting hard, and they were winning as much as they could, putting the pressure on Forge, and Forge were kind of like deer in headlights in the first half, which is very odd considering that they're A, Forge, and B, at home, which was a fortress last season. It was definitely an off day for the home side. I think Bobby said it best afterwards, where they said they would, like, that was a bang average performance from Forge. And if you know anything about Bobby Smirniotis or anything about Forge, bang average is not a good thing for Forge FC. But for Valour, I don't know what they had for breakfast. I don't know what was said in the pre-match, but it worked, because the first half, it was pretty much all Valour.
Yeah, and it was nice seeing how Zachary Fernandez fits in to this side. You got to see him playing on either flank with Antonoglu. The guys in front of him, Faria and Twadek, didn't stop the whole game. They were going at him, and you saw Sean Hundle putting in a bit more work than you usually see as well. Like, they were ready.
He was actually involved.
So yeah, and I really liked Diogo Rezurazao as that 10, because he puts in a bit more work than you really appreciate at times, because he's so slim and so great on the ball. His first touch is fantastic and his composure is brilliant, but he also puts in the extra work defensively off the ball, and having his calmness on the ball and his ability to move it around when it gets into those sort of final third areas was something that we're still waiting. Kean Williams has been away for a year and a bit, so like cut him some slack, but he's not going to have that ability to just get the ball down and move it quickly or slow it down when you need to, which Rezurazao seems to be able to do really well. So I was impressed at that. But yeah, they just hounded them, didn't they? Just hounded them, and that's what got them some results at the end of last season. And this seemed like a bit of a reminder, like, okay, this was working for us last year. Let's try and let's actually do it.
Yeah, I felt like it was a bit of that character growth that we saw at the end of last season, where it's like, okay, this is an identity that we can actually, profit from.
Yeah.
And they struggled to really showcase that in the first two games, but in this one, it felt like they were back to that kind of progress that they showed at the end of 2024, and like they were so determined to win everything, create anything, that they even resorted to overhead kicks.
They've been practicing, haven't they?
I would love to see what a Valour training session was, where it was. I mean, it must not be Phil Dos Santos. It must have been what's his assistant coach, Daryl Fortis, I think his name is Daryl Fortis. Must have said, "All right, lads, everybody, bicycle kick training, 20 minutes," because everyone loved to do it. Chris Schwardek especially, and it was him that his bicycle kick that created the goal.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, both goals weren't stunners. Bit awkward goals, both of them. Yeah. For Valour's opening goal, I forget which Forge defender got in between Twardek and Koilalat that kind of allowed the ball to bounce instead of being collected by Koilalat. But whichever defender got in the way, it allowed Chris Twardek to go for that bicycle kick cross right to Sean Hundle. And Sean Hundle, and there's one thing that Sean Hundle is good at, it is one-touch finishes in the box. Yeah. Just manages to get on the end of that overhead cross and put it away. And you can see Koilalat complaining, but it wasn't even like Twardek that fouled your player. Your player just got in the middle of the defender, got in the middle of you and the ball. There's nothing wrong with that. So the ref just easily waved it away. But regardless of how the goal went in, it was deserved in the way that Valour played. That was, especially the first 45 minutes, that was one of the best halves of football that we've seen Valour play in quite a while, at least since, what was it, like last September or something like that, the last time they got a win. They really played well. And even in this second half, it felt like, Forge got a little bit more into it, but it wasn't like Valour got dominated, or Valour you would expect.
No, it's a bit of give and take.
It was a bit more level, but Valour never felt like they were second best to anything, which I think for Phil Dos Santos and Daryl Fortis, they'll be very happy about, is that even when Forge did score their goal to equalize, and even when they conceded a penalty, they still kind of kept at it and didn't drop their heads. And mentality has always been, I think, a big issue with Valour, and in similar way that it's been for Vancouver. But in that game, they looked really, really mentally strong for at least for Valour standards. I think it was really well done. But let's talk about the two big chances that Forge had. Firstly, both of them were kind of, I like how you put it here, the Jekyll and Hyde show from Jonathan Viscosi. Villain turned hero from Wright's goal to the penalty save on Dan Nemec. Let's talk about Wright's goal. I don't know exactly what happened. We know what it is. It genuinely reminds me of do you remember the famous goal?
I'm trying to remember now because I've seen the Origi one.
Yeah, it was the Merseyside derby between Liverpool and Everton, and it was the same thing where a ball was like ballooned up. And I think it was Van Dijk or somebody that he saw the ball balloon up and then started immediately complaining because it was a missed chance. But instead of going over, and instead of Jordan Pickford, clearing the ball and making sure it goes over, he kind of just puts his hands on the post and it's like, oh, that's going over it. But instead it hits the post, then it drops, it bounces off the post and drops in front of Divock Origi, and Origi heads it in the 93rd minute to win the game. It's a very infamous goal in recent Merseyside derbies. I'm not even a fan of either team, but that's a very famous goal in general for recent Premier League. It was that same thing where the ball was cleared up in the air. You can see players being like, the play's dead, and they're complaining or are starting to work on what the next phase is. And then Viscosi half-heartedly jumps
with a silly choice to punch it.
Yeah.
I think the reason most people are just like, Yeah, like it's either going over or he'll just palm it over. You get a big hand out and just make sure. Like just
Yeah.
be, but he's just going up like he's trying to Superman up into the ball. And it's just such a bizarre decision, which you just now have to get used to with Viscosi.
You did warn us. You did warn us what was going to happen if they kept Viscosi in between the sticks.
Did you see this? Did you see Rocco Romeo's face as it pans to Viscosi afterwards as they were walking back, like to get set up? You could just see Rocco Romeo walking forward, and it just looks like his head is like, oh my god.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is what you're going to get with him. But for all of those moments like that, you will also get moments like the one that he had not much later when there was a penalty called on dubious handball on
Yeah, it's a bit
Campo.
harsh, isn't it? I didn't get the greatest of view, like on the greatest of connections while watching on One Soccer on my laptop.
Yeah, the replay, even I was watching it back this morning, but the replay didn't look even still all that convincing that it's hit his hand. But the referee made the decision, pointed to the spot, and Dan Nimick is one of the most clinical penalty takers in the league. There's a reason why he was Halifax's top goal scorer last season from the penalty spot, essentially. But for some reason, has an off day, like much of Forge on that particular day, and really poor penalty, very central, makes it very easy. Jonathan Viscosi just had to dive the right way, and luckily for him, he did. Gets a palm to it and saves the day, saves the point for Valour. So from villain to hero, Jonathan Viscosi, just on par for the kind of goalkeeper that he is.
It's not boring. I'll give him that.
Yeah. But like many other games in this match day, like all the other games in this match day, there was always one last chance. And unfortunately for Valour, it fell to them, but it was missed. And that was Miles Morgan right at the very end. I think it was off a
kick, was it?
Yeah, it was an overhead kick again from
Twardek. A second overhead kick
again. That he manages to get it to Miles Morgan. Miles Morgan goes for the volley, but just gets too much power over it and balloons it over the crossbar. Had that gone in, I think Valour would have had a deserved 3 points away from home to Hamilton Stadium. But nevertheless, similar to Vancouver in the first match, a lot of positives, I think, for Valour. Both of the bottom teams against both of the top two teams showed why maybe they shouldn't be discounted so early in the season. They just needed to do a little bit better in certain moments to get the game across the line. But really positive play, I think, from Valour in this match overall, and I'm glad that they got something to show for it in the end.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's good. We'll see if they can keep it going. Same as we say for the others.
Yeah, but for Forge, you got to look at Brian Wright again. He's a player that we even talked about it when we were talking about the CONCACAF Champions Cup games. He gets into good positions. He looks like he's a player that can score a bunch of goals, but when it comes to the final action, when it comes to actually shooting, he just manages to fluff his lines on a relatively consistent basis. And, granted, he did score in this game. Once again, if you look at the way that the goal was scored, it was a gift to him in very odd circumstances. But he should have had a second. He had a free header at the back post.
Yeah, not far out at all, was he?
No, not far out at all. And to be fair, Forge didn't play great in open play. Had quite a few opportunities from set pieces.
Yeah.
Missed a few. I think it was Brian Wright definitely had the worst one. I think it was Babuli or somebody else that had another chance at the back post, a little bit further out, a bit more of a difficult chance. But they were creating chances through set pieces. They just needed Brian Wright to score that, to steal the 3 points. at home. Would have been classic Forge. Even on their day off, they can still win matches. But he misses an absolute sitter from the corner. And once again, you got to think, do they really think Brian Wright is going to be that guy for them? Or do they not even care? Because maybe they go the route of, as long as he's that strong presence that helps us in the build-up, we can rely on our wingers and our midfielders to score the goals. But it still feels like he's a number 9. Like, I don't know, maybe this is traditional stuff, but you want your number 9 to score goals and get, those
especially
opportunities
those
and put them
chances
away.
that he's missed.
Exactly. And it's not the first sitter that he's missed this season for Forge. And finally, after 5 games, he gets his first goal of the season in all competitions. But I just, don't know if he can be that reliable striker for a team like Forge with the expectations and the standards that they have. Now, he might go on a purple patch like he did last season and score 5 in his next 6 or whatever, and then he'll make us eat our words. But for now, I'm still not yet convinced that Brian Wright is that number 9 striker for Forge to take them to the next level.
No, and like you say, it probably won't matter too much in the CPL. They've got players who score from different areas. I think the hardest bit will be Canadian Championship when they come up. Like when you're coming up against an MLS side, that's when you kind of need a more clinical striker. Like when the chance drops to him and he's got one chance and he's got to take it. Is he who you want at that time?
Yeah. We'll see how it goes for him, but I think he needs to definitely get a little bit more confidence in front of goal, and hopefully that goal, as weird as it was, helps him get there. But both teams come away with a point, and I think going forward, Valour will be looking to build on it. I think overall, it was a solid game for them. Forge, I'm not too worried about them. An off day, bad day at the office, but they'll come again, and they'll continue to Forge and win a bunch of games. I'm not worried about them whatsoever, really.
Yeah.
But that is all for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on all of our socials again, so you can give us your thoughts on this week's matches, especially on the late chances that were taken and the late chances that were not taken. We'll be back next week to discuss match week number 4. But until then, I'm Felipe Vallejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing up.